Welcome everybody to Decoding Crypto. This is going to be a journey today. We're going to go all the way from, is crypto bad? Talking about the use cases that crypto is so amazing for, all the way to like advanced money laundering schemes and things that traditional financial institutions, crypto exchanges, and compliance officers all around the world have to be aware of. But since we're a little bit early, this presentation, amazing webinar where we have Justine, Sandip, and Evan, it's being presented by Cloudburst. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what Cloudburst is, and then we'll jump directly into introductions.
Sure. Cloudburst is basically a premier off-chain data provider. And what do we mean by that? We've seen a lot of different providers go into the market trying to find intelligence about bad actors, illicit activity, and whatnot, looking at the blockchain, looking exclusively at blockchain transactions and how things move around. But there's a lot more information out there. And as it turns out, anyone that knows anything about crypto knows that a lot of the conversations that are driving the market and are driving what's going on with crypto are taking place online in chat platforms like Telegram, for instance. And in order to get a better picture of what's going on, of who's driving this activity and what they're doing in advance, the best place to look really is not the blockchain. That's the receipt that tells you what's already happened. If you want to see what's going on before it actually reaches the blockchain, the best place to look is the conversations that are taking place among these actors. And that's exactly what we're looking at. So whether it is, rug pulls, whether it's drainers, whether it's crypto money laundering, these kind of conversations we're looking at and trying to understand who is doing this, why are they doing it, and what will the likely outcome be.
That's amazing. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your introduction, your experience that got you to this point of starting Cloudburst?
Sure. So I have been doing work looking at cyber intelligence for, gosh, maybe the last 20 years or more. I started off doing consulting work for a variety of different U.S. government agencies, as well as foreign law enforcement, looking at terrorist use of the internet and other kind of like online illicit activity. Then back in 2010, I founded another company called Flashpoint, which is now like a major cyber intelligence provider. And then back in 2022, I realized that what was really missing from the market was, were tools and products aimed at crypto cyber intelligence, understanding the market, understanding what the threats to the market were, providing kind of the same level of protection and diligence that was available for general cybersecurity, but specifically for the crypto and digital finance market.
That's amazing. And I've been active in the space since 2017, 2018, which brings me to Justine. Justine, why don't you tell us who you are and what crypto ISAC is? Because people have been begging for a crypto ISAC for a long time since I entered the industry, and you finally brought this to fruition with you and your team. So maybe give us a little bit background about yourself, but also maybe give us traditional ISAC and why there was a need for a crypto specific ISAC.
Oh, you bet. Thank you. So, yep, cybersecurity, or before that, it was called information security, has been my career for a very long time. And I started in vulnerability research, working for the intelligence community. So I was lucky enough to sort of land on the fun offensive side of things, developing exploits and offensive capabilities to help demonstrate weaknesses in systems of all kinds. And that led to a private sector career specializing in the sort of penetration testing space and the application security space. And then growing security departments within different institutions, which led to my role as Chief Information Security Officer at Bloomberg and at Dow Jones. And then I eventually figured out what I love to do is build solutions. So I embraced my sort of entrepreneurial spirit and helped grow a couple of cybersecurity companies in the research space and in the healthcare industry, spent some time looking at medical device security. And all the while was very interested in what was going on chain with crypto and beyond and Web3. So leveraging my experience interacting with ISACs over the years, I jumped at the opportunity to help stand up the crypto ISAC. And yeah, it's a tricky thing to launch an ISAC, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Fortunately, there are other ISACs and other industries that have been tremendously successful. So information sharing focused on cyber threat intelligence that's unique to the crypto and blockchain space is what we're focused on. We're a specially formed government recognized entity, so we're a 501c6 nonprofit to be precise. And we represent the crypto industry. We've got a set of vetted companies that want to carefully share very sensitive information like cyber threat intelligence, reflecting risks unique to the crypto industry. So that's what we're doing, hyper-focused on blockchain, where our membership spans all types of organizations building on blockchain. And we've also got a strong focus on public-private collaboration as well. And ultimately, our mission is to enhance trust in the adoption of blockchain-based technologies by improving security. So we've already got really strong, security teams in the crypto industry. But one of the challenges has been sharing between those teams, between those organizations, from the private sector into the public sector and vice versa. So that's really what the crypto ISAC is now bringing to the crypto industry in general.
I love it. And as humble as you are, why don't you name drop a little some of the, founding members? Because these are some of the biggest organizations in the industry and some other ones that people may not know of, but they do huge work when it comes to crypto cybersecurity. Is there any members that you want to kind of highlight? I know there's a lot, but maybe shout out some of the members.
Yeah, and I'm worried that I will miss. So please check out our website to see our full list of founding members because they're all awesome. Such a diverse array of companies ranging from, on-chain L1s, L2s, folks in the insurance industry, security companies that are specialized in security solutions for crypto, some of the big brands that everybody knows, with amazing security teams internally like Circle, Coinbase, Solana, Consensus, Fireblocks. We've got a whole span of companies supporting the crypto ISAC, and we're going beyond that too to all stages of members so that we can also help the Web3 community and the startup community as well as the institutions whose security teams we have so much respect for.
I love it. And last but not least, Sandip, everyone knows that you're probably in the traditional standpoint because of your title, right? Whether it's a traditional financial institution or consultancy, they always have the longest titles where you can pretty much describe your whole roles and responsibilities just in the title alone. But why don't you fill us in about who you are and what you're doing at BNP?
Thank you, Stephen. First of all, to everyone who has dialed into this webinar, good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're dialing in. My name is Sandip Wadje. I'm based in London. I work for a large French bank, BNP Paribas. My focus is emerging technology risks, and within that, I'm predominantly focused more on cloud security, artificial intelligence, digital assets, a lot around blockchain and crypto, also a lot on threat intelligence, and particularly a lot of experience and previous background on collecting open source, deep and dark web intelligence. Also having that collaboration with the European financial sector, particularly with institutions like Europol's Financial Services Advisory Group, or whether it is then European Financial Roundtable. Most of these are closed-door forums for financial institutions to kind of exchange intelligence or IOCs. But there is a lot of collaboration on not just Intel, but also on emerging domains, because everyone wants to know what are the baselines for blockchain or crypto, or how, for example, AI adoption is being delivered, in a particular institution. What are the lessons learned? So I think financial sector, particularly when it comes to emerging technologies and domains, is quite receptive to collaboration. We all want to exchange notes, understand what's going on. Yeah.
That's awesome. And before we get into some of the, advanced techniques, the money laundering schemes, the platforms that some of these illicit actors are, why don't we level set the playing field here? And why don't you describe that, crypto illicit activity is really under 2% of the total activity with, reports from Chainalysis and others. But what are some of the bright spots that you're seeing, especially in the emerging markets? What are some of the bright spots and some of the use cases that legitimate reasons why blockchain, DLT, and cryptocurrencies are important to the financial ecosystem that we're all sharing in right now?
Absolutely. So I think I'll try to do a recap as much as possible in terms of the cryptocurrency. So first thing, I think the metrics are all out there. Number of crypto analytics firms publish studies, and they have all consistent metrics that if you compare to the amount of fraud, money laundering, or illicit activity that you see in traditional markets. On the crypto side, it has been relatively low, like anywhere between 1% to 2%. I think crypto got bad name also because it gets attention, and that's why probably I would not say a couple of incidents or events didn't happen, but generally, if you look at the basis for cryptocurrencies, it was a brave attempt, right? Because there was essentially a group, and there's a lot of study being done on this topic. Is there was specifically certain demographics they thought that, you know what, there is something that we need to try in terms of either there is alternate asset class, which is Bitcoin, or maybe something which probably what we see today is those layer one cryptocurrencies. But when you start looking into this ecosystem and connect back to like COVID-19 and the free money and the inflow of money that happened, and we all know crypto went all the way to top in like, around October, November 2021. I think the bright spots are, and if you look back now, the kind of evolution on the custody side would not have happened if that kind of money and momentum didn't come in crypto then. Or, for example, the kind of evolution on custody services, the security of custody solutions. So I think there are a lot of bright spots in terms of how, for example, certain technologies actually fueled then mainstream adoption. Maybe not directly in terms of for example, financial institutions having Ethereum on their books, but it did play a role. Then Ethereum being the primary essentially technology and token for driving that blockchain collaboration among financial institutions. So I think there are bright spots. The fact that we got a lot of momentum around custody services, the custody market itself, because and then that's what happens with every place, right? If you look at cyber security, we all have our lessons what went wrong with cloud in 15 years back. So I think every new digital technology goes through certain lessons learned. But I think what has happened is with that innovation, what we see now, the use cases are almost like little bit like replicating, getting similar. So even though, for example, if you see payments, 1.5, 2 years back, no one would have said, tokenized payments are like reality. But now everyone in corporate side also are talking about tokenized payments. Why? Because somebody started that trend in crypto. So I think there are bright spots associated with crypto. Just like any other financial activity, there is, I think, illicit activity in crypto, but the volumes are, I would say, are quite low, and we just need to tap into the innovative technologies, get to the bottom of what's wrong happening in crypto and how do we manage it properly.
I love that. And Justine, why don't you tell us, because you said you're not going to recreate the wheel with crypto ISAC, but maybe tell us some of the things that you do not do, because I think anytime an association comes into crypto, people expect them to do a wide range of things. So tell us what you're not going to do, what you do, and why do you feel it's so needed at this time? Why were people begging for crypto ISAC to come in place? What was really that big void that you're filling right now?
It's really the information sharing within industry, across industry, and into the public sector as well. So it's the collaboration between organizations that's been the missing link until the crypto ISAC is stood up and able to facilitate the safe, sensible sharing of cyber threat intelligence. So that information sharing is very much what we're laser focused on right now. In the future, we'll move more in towards best practices. We've got organizations that we partner with on things like standards development, which you'll see other ISACs tackling. But right now, we're very focused on the cyber threat intelligence and facilitating the sharing of that.
That's amazing. Evan, you were, dubbed one of the best people when it came to counterterrorism information. You've been all over the news media as that go-to person. You have your own Wikipedia page, which is pretty exciting. I think if you can get that on your own. But we're going to go deep into what your company comes into when it comes to crypto risk. But what are some of the traditional things that you see? Where are money launderers still using the traditional fiat system? Because you see a lot of off-chain things, even though it's directly related to crypto. Where are some of the areas where we're still seeing the traditional financial ecosystem being exploited?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you hear about crypto money laundering, obviously you think about cryptocurrency, right?
Right.
And the natural assumption is that this is all taking place in the crypto world. But you don't have to think about money laundering too in depth to realize there has to be a cash out point somewhere, right? There has to be money exiting the market somewhere, right? And there is, and even with crypto money laundering, it means that traditional financial institutions are still involved, right? And when you're looking at the conversations that are taking place among the actors that are doing this online, what's remarkable is that number one, this activity seems to be like geolocated in particular hotspots. But in those particular hotspots, there are banks that are appearing again and again in terms of these conversations, right? And maybe it's a surprise, maybe it's not. It turns out that Russian financial institutions come up the most frequently, right? But they're not alone, right? There are also major Chinese financial institutions that are coming up frequently in terms of conversations that are taking place among crypto money launderers. They actually show video inside the banks, showing them like withdrawing like pallets full of cash, which is remarkable because like in a place like China, nobody deals in cash anymore, right? So the fact that nobody at the bank would notice it's suspicious that someone's pulling out a pallet full of cash, obviously there's something wrong going on there, right? And there are even a few Western banks that come up. So I think it's notable. And then of course it's not just banks, but it's also crypto trading and exchange platforms, right? Um, you see a lot of conversations involving these folks talking about Binance as a cash out point, right? Obviously, that's not great, especially when it's sort of out in the open and when these people are actually saying this is stolen crypto, right? Because that's also what's remarkable about some of this stuff is that they're not really hiding anything. They're saying this is stolen crypto. We have stolen this from X and we are selling it to Y. And that's not just in terms of the conversations. That's even in like the channel descriptions. That's how kind of explicit they are about this.
That's super interesting. Justine, I kind of wanted to go back to you. You're hearing conversations from some of the most prominent organizations within the crypto industry. What are some of the threats that you're talking about? What are some of the cybersecurity red flags that you're seeing right now that you've been able to address up to this date?
Well, just to sort of continue from what Evan was just sharing, what we are seeing is a tremendous amount of cooperation between law enforcement and the exchanges, including the ones that we're all very familiar with. There's a lot of collaboration going on right now, and there's a whole industry of on-chain tracers and investigators who are taking advantage of the transparent nature of blockchain to trace funds as, post-theft, post-crime, as they are converted, moved between chains, mixed, etc., across blockchain systems. And so this is actually the good news. The fact that we have this level of visibility into where these funds go, it's not always easy and we have to move very quickly. But I will tell you that the centralized exchanges are very collaborative and cooperative when it comes to working with law enforcement to combat some of these crimes. When it comes to big picture nation state style threats, we are often finding ourselves talking about threats from North Korea, DPRK related threats. And that's not just sophisticated cyber threats, that's social engineering, that's the IT worker problem, it's human problems as well as technical problems. But, I'm really actually optimistic about where we're going in terms of the threat landscape and blockchain and crypto. The fact that we have this level of visibility into an infrastructure is unique. We didn't have that in Web 2. We didn't get to scan all of the smart contracts and analyze all the vulnerabilities, identify vulnerabilities, watch bad actors set up their infrastructure pre-attack, like what's going on right now. Some of these cybersecurity companies in crypto are amazingly sophisticated at being able to help predict and act as a sort of an early warning system for victims, which is not a level of visibility that's possible in Web 2. So I'm feeling happy and excited actually about where we're going with security on chain. Just, we've got to mature our systems and information sharing is a part of that, but we're well underway already. And there's a huge amount of, as I say, public-private collaboration underway right now.
And that's actually proactive, right? Where law enforcement, even the banks and, crypto exchanges, it used to be very reactive, but now we have that kind of pre-attack intelligence that
Figuring out how
allows
to
us.
deflect. Yes, we are.
And I want to talk to you because we're going to talk a lot about money laundering, and there's kind of like a blurry line between cybersecurity and money laundering. Usually, you're at the point where at cybersecurity level turns into money laundering down the line once they've committed the attack. Do you want to kind of distinguish the two to help out the audience? Because I think we'd like to pool everything, fraud, money laundering, compliance, cybersecurity, all in one bucket. But I think we kind of have to separate it in order to attack the problem from different angles.
Sorry, who was that question?
That was to you, is like if you can kind of
Okay,
unblur
cool.
the lines between
So,
cybersecurity and money laundering, in your opinion, like what your opinion is.
one way to think about it, in my opinion, is that, cybersecurity or information security is the goal, right? That's what we're trying to reach. And it's never ending. We're always working our way towards the state of security, but there's always going to be some inherent, weaknesses in our infrastructure. So these weaknesses or these vulnerabilities are what allow bad things to happen when there's an exploit and financial crimes. And then ultimately, these bad actors who have managed to steal funds, for example, have to go about laundering it, and they have to make these assets usable in some way, convert those crypto assets through various chains, through these mixes, all the way back to what we have seen a lot of the time is cash. Cash is still king within these threat landscapes. So, one way to look at it is the cybersecurity and the cybersecurity vulnerabilities are sort of further upstream, resulting in the theft, the bad thing happening, the assets being stolen or taken over by bad actors. And then there's the money laundering to make use of those assets. And of course, it gets a bit more complicated than that because the act of laundering itself can take advantage of cybersecurity vulnerabilities. But at least that's one way of sort of mentally separating the two.
And for compliance officers, they're probably happy for you. It's less work for them to have to do on the back end of the money laundering. Evan, I know everyone's wanting to know what are some of the most critical threats in the crypto space today. And then we're going to go to Sandip, and we have some great questions in the chat already. So if you have some questions, feel free to put them into the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. I'll make sure to try and incorporate them the best as we can throughout the conversation. And if we have time, we'll, do some quick fireside Q&A based on the questions that we see. But Evan, give us the lowdown. What is some of those things that people don't even know that's happening in the crypto landscape when it comes to illicit activity?
Sure. I mean, again, I think if we tie this back to money laundering, I think, what's remarkable is the amount of activity that's taking place and the fact that it is sort of taking place out in the open where it can be tracked, right? You don't have to know a lot about crypto to know that Telegram is sort of the primary area in which, aficionados of crypto, regardless of their illicit or licit, that's where everyone's talking, right? But we're now seeing sort of a democratization of this, where even folks that are in China, who can avail themselves of WeChat and QQ, they're all piling onto Telegram. And the channels that they're joining, it's remarkable because these channels are labeled crypto money laundering, right? They are labeled that in Mandarin. They are labeled that in English. They are labeled that in Russian, right? Some of this activity is somewhat camouflaged. It's, I'm buying or selling USDT. USDT is obviously the main kind of sort of currency for what these folks are doing, right? So some of it's just, I'm buying or selling USDT, face-to-face transactions only, which is a little bit odd. Like, why would someone be needing to sell or buy like $10 million worth of USDT and has to do it face-to-face? It's a little bit weird, right? And some of it is just, explicit. Like I am laundering money, right? And some of it involves, physical businesses. They're hiding the money in the books the same way, you see in the movies. Some of it appears to be, again, working with traditional financial institutions. It is very regionalized, right? I think, one of the problems with cybersecurity is that there are these kind of mantras, right? And when people think about like hackers or whatnot, I think there is a tendency to think about Russians, right? And there is definitely an active sort of market in Russia and the former Soviet Union for this kind of activity, right? But there are other markets out there geographically that I think people miss, right? There's a huge crypto money market laundering, money laundering market in the Arabian Peninsula, right? Particularly in the Arabian Gulf region, Dubai, Qatar, Saudi Arabia. A lot of it is locally based because, again, they're looking to do face-to-face transactions. Some of it has deep connections back into India, where we see another market for this stuff. They are tied into regional banks, right? It's not just general, like they are tied into specific regional banks that they are connected to and they're doing business with, right? Some of it even looks like it is tied into sanctions violations, right? There are people talking about exchanging Iranian antiques and things like that, or goods that are smuggled out of Iran for USDT, right? So it's this whole sub-market, and like how many people are involved, right? Some of these channels, like a single like Mandarin language channel for like Chinese folks looking to launder money, a single channel can have 30,000 people in it, right? And there are hundreds of these channels, right? Now, again, in some of these places, it's sort of obvious why. China, look, there are currency controls. It's very difficult to get money out of the country. We sort of understand why is China popular? There's a reason for it, right? But nestled in this stuff is other illicit activity as well. It's a little bit worrisome. Everything from arms smuggling, narcotics smuggling, you name it, it's all kind of sandwiched in, right? And that's why it's so important to track this stuff. These folks, it looks like they're involved in multiple different streams of illicit activity. Money laundering is just one.
That's that's scary to think about 30,000 in a Telegram group. Sandip, what are you seeing? Because Evan brought up some great points about some geopolitical hotspots, the type of transaction that definitely impacts traditional financial institutions. Just before I started in crypto, I worked at International Bank, and back in 2017, every crypto transaction was suspicious at that point. What are you seeing, or what are the things internally that you see as risks to your financial institution that has a nexus to crypto?
So I wouldn't necessarily say nexus to crypto, but I think you also need to, and the points that Ivan made specifically, and something which I started at the beginning, is there is a good side of crypto and there is a bad side of crypto. And we have to keep in mind that there is a certain demographics, and a lot of statistics has been proposed, done. There is a certain age group, relatively young people, they're very active in crypto. And if you look at, for example, why someone like me from a traditional financial institution would be so interested in Cloudburst and the data, one of the driver is of course in terms of whatever exposure you may have, you want to figure out, hey, is there like a pump and dump going on here? Well, good point, in terms of having a spotlight. Do you have clients that have underlying exposure to crypto assets? How do I know which has been manipulated, which has not been manipulated? You need those signals coming from the ground, like, okay, sounds like something on the books that a client has, and sorry for that, not necessarily the financial institution may have, but client is at liberty, right? They may decide to invest and they may have exposure to crypto, and then you still need to analyze what that exposure is. So second is what that exposure means in terms of that crypto intelligence that needs to come, and the last one is like, if there is a traditional financial institution, these Telegram channels and the chatter, while it is also a good spotlight in terms of money laundering, it is also, a good opportunity to understand what is actually really being discussed in terms of cryptocurrency evolution, use cases, etc. So it's not like, what I'm trying to say is, when Cloudburst gives me data, I look both. I look into, oh, okay, bad guy is up to something. Oh, there is something good coming out of it as well, which something can be benchmarked and be shared with, the community. And then there are other drivers, for example, similarities, because you need to keep in mind, again, without taking a specific name of the financial institution, which was very heavily impacted as a result of, social media bank run. And that is also very interesting insight, because you can learn from that data and experience and say, you know what, how do we learn from this to make sure that we don't land into social media bank run situation? Because that's where the signals come from again. So I look at, so I think the points Ivan made are great. And I think there are similarities, and how, when it scales, how we can tap into the data that Cloudburst has, but more so both different spectrums in terms of tapping it into like, spotting the illicit activity in bad actors, but from a good viewpoint as well as to how do we take certain measures to engage with our customers.
That's super interesting. Speaking about your customers, I think it'd be great to understand what type of demand are you seeing internally at the bank with things like the Bitcoin and Ethereum spot ETFs being approved in the US. We're seeing the tokenization, as you stated at the start of this conversation, maybe before people joined us, the tokenization of pretty much everything is topic of conversation, especially with real world assets like stocks and bonds and real estate. What type of demand are you seeing, and what are customers begging you for now that you're heading the emerging market sector?
So I will make, I'll provide a generic update, not specifically, what's going on in the bank. One of the things that helps in my role is the fact that I'm able to tap into various intelligence sources and benchmark in terms of some sort of a competitive insights, and which is something then we definitely look into as to what's going on in the market. So what I've done, and this is something we have done for over a period of 3 years using open source intelligence, deep and dark web, now also with technologies such as Cloudburst, we are trying to look into where is the adoption going up, where it is essentially reaching some sort of a tipping point, and this is loosely or firmly in certain cases linked to cryptocurrencies. So one is of course tokenization, and then when you look into tokenization, it has almost hit level of the transactions to go almost mainstream. 2.5 years back, the kind of pilots that were launched in the industry by some of the leading banks were like 20, 30, 40 million. And now last year, this year, you see announcements where much larger transactions are being placed in terms of tokenization of tokenized bonds. And that also reflects the confidence in the underlying technology, which in large number of cases has been Ethereum, which is a cryptocurrency. And then brings that question like, okay, how do we pay gas fees? How do we monitor compliance? So it is, in a way, it is still linked to the underlying, the crypto, maybe in smaller volumes, simply because today, a lot of these pilots in the industry, they're point in time, they're not production 24/7. The secondary market has, not fully open or integrated. The moment that happens, that also indicates the level of, I would say, absorption some layer one tokens may have. So one is tokenization. One of the things that came probably in terms of the crypto wave in 2021-22 is the whole conversation around how to make payments efficient. That was one of the drivers, right? And we talked about it. Is again, there is a human side to USDT as well, right? So even USDT may be the most favored currency for avoiding sanctions, but the reality is where countries, take an example of Turkey, with their own currency is so much devalued, they would rather have something else, in their pockets. And then in that case, then when someone is sending money from US to Turkey, they would rather send, so this is a money laundering, by the way, but then there is a human side to it. At the end of the day, the person sending the money from States to Turkey to, friends, family, they're like, I really want to give them that financial security they are not having because the currency back home in my own country has devalued. So that fueled that conversation on how do we make payments better. And now you fast forward in 2024, going forward in 2025, CBDCs, everyone is talking about it. There are already pilots going on. And now the whole tokenized deposits, how to issue like, the stable coins for internal payment and settlement or external payment and settlement is also becoming a topic of conversation. So I think a lot of these use cases are coming up in terms of mainstream adoption. Some probably were too early for their, age, decentralized finance. It was very innovative, but probably without that much needed risk management discipline. And that's why DeFi didn't probably accelerate to the level it has accelerated. But otherwise, I would say there are a lot of use cases that are really matured, particularly tokenization of bonds, tokenization of funds, also tokenized deposits. And I think the adoption is kind of growing in terms of what else you can do in terms of leveraging blockchain. And obviously, again, there is already a pilot that has happened in the industry on tokenizing, carbon credits and creating like a buy and sell place for carbon credits. So I think it is definitely going mainstream, and a lot of this is inherently, I wouldn't put like confirmed number, but let us say 70 to 80% is all layer one, which essentially also puts some sort of a link back to crypto.
That's super interesting. Anwar, you had a question, and I hope that answers it. Feel free to ask it. I think, Sandip did a great job of talking about what's stopping DeFi from mass adoption. So I think he answered your question there, Anwar. Justine, I want to take it over to you because you mentioned, the transparency of smart contracts. But we also saw DeFi was, one of the biggest losers in 2022, losing almost $3 billion due to those same smart contract exploits. Because they're transparent, hackers have great visibility and can now test, how strong of security they have. What are the conversations around how can we make DeFi more safer that you think that your network is having? And, maybe just your overview of the DeFi landscape that we're in right now. Is it a lack of maybe the security before some of these protocols go live? Are the hackers getting better? Maybe you can shed some light for people that are like, hey, is DeFi even safe for me to invest in?
Yeah, it's always a bit of a race, isn't it, between innovation and, the need to move quickly and deploy quickly, and innovate fast, and the risks that can come with that when we get the sort of the speed wobbles and the security vulnerabilities get inadvertently unaddressed in these early stage technologies. So I suspect that there's a certain amount of that sort of, execute fast, don't be afraid to, break things, recover quick, that sort of agile thinking was probably a big part of the initial push on DeFi. Some of the other interesting conversations that I've seen take place recently, though, are to consider DeFi as a sort of a form of critical infrastructure, which would be an interesting path forward if that gets traction, because critical infrastructure starts getting a lot more attention at a policy level and at a regulatory level and a compliance level. So some of the sort of optional, nice to have security features that might have been viewed in that light on DeFi, 1.0 might not be doable with a sort of a second take if that sort of regulatory and compliance pressure comes down on DeFi, if indeed it does become recognized as critical infrastructure. So I think that's a really good, healthy conversation to have, and will certainly result in a more resilient set of technologies on the DeFi side.
One question we had in the chat was, how do you achieve early threat analysis when it comes to these smart contract and DeFi platforms? I'm assuming you have a couple members that, that's exactly what they do, right? They see the patterns before they recognize the risks and the threats before, the wider community does. And they're putting it out there on Twitter. What are your thoughts? Is it more exposure? Is it more information sharing? I'm assuming one of the problems was, hey, like, you see a protocol getting hacked in real time or about to get hacked, is like, how do you get in contact with their team, or who do you report that to? What is maybe some of the things that you're hoping that the crypto ISAC can do to kind of facilitate that early threat analysis, but more so communicate with each other so that, that these platforms aren't getting hacked, especially when are early warnings from some of the members in your community?
Yeah, well, one of the things we're doing is providing an alternative to disclosure via social media. So
you don't want them to announce it on Twitter anymore, Justine?
I mean, disclosure is a good thing. Don't get me wrong. I like it when awareness is raised and people can act on information. But of course, vulnerabilities and the announcement of exploits and attacks on Discord or on Telegram, take it as you will. There's a level of vetting that may need to take place on that information before it can be acted on with high confidence. So our goal at Crypto ISAC is to produce actionable insights and intelligence that does come with high confidence. And we're also facilitating the connection between victims and security researchers and security solutions providers when these observations are being made. So as I say, it's an alternative to disclosure via and notification via social media through more sensitive channels.
Evan, I'm curious, DeFi sounds like a playground for illicit activity, right? You don't have to give any information to a centralized exchange or modify information. Nobody knows who you are, and you can kind of send and receive funds, intercept and intervene. What are you seeing that's happening in DeFi? Now, I know your tool focuses on the off-chain, but I'm assuming that these attacks are a lot of conversations are happening on these messaging groups before they take place on the actual protocol. Is there any mentions of like, hey, let's attack this DeFi protocol, or let's pump and dump this certain token that is connected to this exchange? Give us some of the goods on what you're hearing. What is some of that internal sentiment chatter that's happening from these illicit actors?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think one of the problems with DeFi is it's not always a big enough market for these folks, right? That's part of the challenge is there's not enough money to be made, or there's not enough victims, or it's just too difficult to do, right? Look, part of that may be what we're looking at, chiefly. So it could be our bias, but that's just what we're seeing, right? In terms of what tokens are they targeting, they're targeting everything, right? I think when we hear about pumps and dumps or price manipulation scams, I think the tendency is to think it's all meme coins, right? It's all coins that are worthless, or that have no value, or that have a couple 100,000 market cap or whatever, right? And the reality is, when you look at the numbers, what's striking is that the coins that are being targeted for price manipulation scams and for pump and dumps, they tend to be major market cap tokens. They tend to be tokens with with market caps in billions of dollars, right? Going all the way up to like Bitcoin. And I think, sometimes we get that question. Frequently, I get that question is like, Bitcoin, like, how could they possibly move the market for Bitcoin? That can't be right, right? And, I understand where that comes from, but then, the response is, like, people are moving the market right now for like GameStop and AMC, which are publicly traded commodities on the stock market, right? People appear to be moving the market for other commodities like Tesla and Nvidia, right? Why is it remarkable to you that they would be able to do that with Bitcoin as well? I mean, it's not remarkable to me. I think, and the truth is that some of this activity is organized, some of it is not. But, I think just to understand the way that financial markets are moving, sentiment and emotions play a big role these days in how people buy and sell, and what their plans are with regards to these kind of commodities, right? It's not just crypto, it's every kind of commodity, right? And those emotions and those sentiments oftentimes are better kind of measurements of where things are going than the fundamentals of a particular company that is behind a commodity, or a token that is behind a commodity, right? And so understanding those sentiments and emotions ahead of time is now becoming an essential part of understanding where the market is going. It's not enough just to say, well, that company or that token has a bright future, or it doesn't have a bright future, right? That won't necessarily translate to gains or movement in the market, right? And that's, again, it sounds ridiculous. I think at one point, the idea that you can learn everything you need to know from Telegram chats would have sounded ridiculous to most people. And maybe it should, but the reality is that, if you want to understand what the key influencer markets are doing, and you want to understand what they're doing before they buy or sell, or whatever they're planning, yeah, you have to go where these people are convening and discussing what they're doing. And that is, for better or for worse, it's Telegram.
Right. Sandip, I'm curious, now that we've talked a little bit about the scariness of DeFi, what are your thoughts? How do traditional financial institutions, dabble in there? How do they dip their toe into DeFi when there's so many, compliance red flags that are raised in a decentralized network like that? Are there ways that financial institutions can maybe connect with other private companies to like start dabbling in the DeFi? Talk about, maybe with some of the things that you're scared about or you're excited about when it comes to traditional financial institutions getting into DeFi.
Sure. So I think let us reflect on the previous conversation, and it's very important. We can use this, webinar also to deliver certain messages. First thing first, I think if you see a lot of DeFi projects in the last 2-3 years, a large number of these projects actually came from people who worked in very large financial institutions, and they thought, you know what, this could be done much better in the crypto world, and went on to build those decentralized finance projects. So it's not like somebody without any financial services understanding popped out of nowhere and said, I want to build this, DeFi solution. A lot of them came with very strong credentials. But I think where things probably didn't work well is one, I think very poor hygiene on custody. And we've seen it on a number of occasions where as simple task as putting, let us say 80% or 60% of your assets in a cold storage has not been done. You put that in the hot wallet, you guess what's going to happen. So I think on the custody side, that hygiene was not properly made and still issue today. What happened in India, for example, which was like probably one of the largest, crypto highs this year is again issues with the custody. So I think on the custody side, the hygiene was not followed. Second thing is a lot of these DeFi projects, if you look at, for example, traditional financial institution, if you look at banks, almost every bank will probably have like what, 1,000, 2,000 people focused just on credit risk and stress testing that infrastructure. So DeFi, even though it was a good idea, I don't think they came up with that risk management view saying, am I really prepared for the bank run scenario? And then while the idea was good, the users had a good idea, they were not ready to deal with the bank. And all it takes for the bank run scenario in the DeFi world, and we've seen that story happen 2 years back, is a couple of bad actors, essentially getting into that ecosystem. And so that is another part, is not being ready to handle or put guardrails to deal with bank run situation. If they had guardrails to deal with bank run situation, but same is, the story with, so many collapses we've seen, that they would have been able to avoid that. So I think there are certain things for the crypto industry to learn how essentially risk management done is TradeFi and how they can actually implement that in cryptocurrency world. That was not done. I can, in terms of TradeFi, a lot of company banks still don't have crypto on their books. But I think just because the bank doesn't have crypto on the books doesn't mean the customers don't have crypto on the books. So you still need to tap into the open source, the social media channels, also some of the cryptocurrency data. Also, for example, if you are in a B2C retail side, you really want to make sure that some of these illicit exchanges are blocked and the transactions are not placed on those exchanges, or your users are not signing up accounts on those exchanges. And that's not going to happen if you don't have that cryptocurrency data, because and that's very interesting, right? The data is still there. And I'm not talking about transfers, because transfers you control. You can have a blacklist and you can say, you know what, these retail customers, I stop them from sending money to Binance. What about Visa? What about MasterCard? So you really still need that cryptocurrency data and say, you know what, these are the kind of places where I really want to forbid my B2C retail customers from, dealing with cryptocurrency. Some went to the extreme. They completely blocked, like, you know what, as a retail banking customer, we will not deal in, crypto at all. But not everyone has done that. And then where do you see all these volume coming from? Because not everyone is doing transfers, right? People are swiping their card. You can swipe your card, buy USDT online, and then move you to, and I've done that personally. So there are so many ways you can do that. So I think it's very important if you look at traditional finance, and particularly both your corporate clients, also your retail clients, and you're trying to understand their crypto exposure, you really need to have a handle on the latest technologies, understand how this is done, and then ask yourself, how do I protect your customers?
And Evan, I think this is, when I remember we first saw your platform, pig butchering is a huge deal. But what you're showing me on your platform is, hey, you have crypto addresses, you have people's phone numbers, you have their location. And this is some of the information that exactly what Sandip is talking about, is that they're not coming in there with the crypto address and saying, hey, this is where I made the transfer. This is where intelligence is huge, where you're kind of compiling the story based on the information the bank would have, based on the information that a connected crypto exchange would have, based on domains they're using to kind of facilitate some of this pig butchering. What are some of the nexuses that you're seeing that you've been able to help some of the traditional financial institutions with?
Sure. I mean, look, I mean, that's part of the issue here. When you hear about pig butchering, and just so everyone is familiar with what we're talking about here, we're talking about basically romance scams that end up with people sending crypto to like fake crypto investment fronts or whatever. One of the challenges here, fundamental challenges, people hear about pig butchering and they throw up their hands and say, oh, it's too complicated a problem to deal with. We're never going to be able to intercept all these conversations. We're never going to be able to educate people to avoid these kind of scams. And I think that's part of the problem here, because these are solvable issues, right? We may not be able to solve it every time, but we can address a lot of this, right? And I think, we started thinking about this at Cloudburst. We were trying to think, how can we stop this if it's conversations that are taking place? There's no opportunity for a man in the middle. There's no place for us to observe when they're messaging. How can we do this? And we came up with ways of being able to detect the front ends, the actual front ends that they're using to take the crypto funds as they are being set up. So we can see them being set up. We can understand what's going on. We can pull out any crypto addresses or phone numbers are in there. And then that way we can alert traditional financial institutions, crypto exchanges, whoever it is, we can alert them and tell them these are known crypto fraud actors. They are involved in pig butchering. This is the front end. This is how much money is involved, et cetera, right? We can do all that, right? We're only a small startup. We can do all that, right? And I think part of it is also, number one, we're partnering or we're working with Crypto ISAC in order to try to make sure that this information is getting out as widely as possible, right? Because this information does have to be shared. And the second part of it is that, there's different components of this, right? There's the first component, which is identifying the fraudster, right? The next component then is jumping and saying, okay, now we have a suspected fraudster, a pig butchering scam, we have a wallet address. Obviously, the next step is to go to a blockchain analysis company and start looking at the blockchain transactions and understanding, are there any other wallets that are connected in with this, either as victims or perpetrators or as conspirators or whatever. That's one of the reasons why we've partnered with Chainalysis, right? Obviously, the idea being there has to be a way of jumping from we found a wallet address to now looking what are the various different transactions this has been engaged with, right? And again, emphasizing the nature and the value of partnerships in this domain. Everyone does sort of a little different piece of this. We sort of have to be able to come together at some point to be able to make sure we're addressing this as an ecosystem, because these are solvable problems. Really, to say that we can't solve pig butchering and understanding who is behind pig butchering is just embarrassing, right? We hear about pig butchering schemes being tied into different illicit networks in like Southeast Asia that were just sanctions put in place against a Cambodian politician and businessman. There are pig butchering schemes that are definitely originating in Southeast Asia. There are also pig butchering schemes that, they're inside the house. They're right here in the United States, right? And the people that are doing them are not criminal geniuses by any means, right? So the fact that we're throwing up our hands and saying we can't solve this problem, it's a bit embarrassing, because the people that we're surrendering to here, right, this is not the Al Capone of cybercrime, right? So I think it is necessary for us to be able to share information and work together, because these are solvable problems.
And shout out to people, obviously Crypto ISAC, people like Alona Katz, who I believe was on the call, Aaron West, who have that mentality is like, let's not throw up our hands. What if we could bring everyone together at the table to help solve this? One thing I do want to talk about, because we brought up so much about Telegram, the founder was recently arrested. Justine, I want to go over to you, because you're saying social media is not the best place to put out this information. How do you create these conduits? What do you think of Telegram, where a lot of legitimate crypto users, including myself or people in tech, use it quite frequently? How do you find what's the best communication method, especially when, illicit actors are attracted to the same thing that, the same systems that cybersecurity professionals are attracted to, but for completely different reasons?
it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, Telegram's done a really good job of establishing itself as the platform of choice for the crypto community at large. But it's not the platform of choice for everyone, right? You know, regulated enterprise employees are not using Telegram as a means to communicate. Even the professional security research community, the guys who are really privacy conscious and you know, researching new vulnerabilities and sharing techniques, those guys are not on Telegram either. So I mean, take from that what you will. But look, I'm not really a fan of pointing the finger at tech creators, you know, just because the technology is used by the bad guys. But I have to imagine, you know, with that arrest of the Telegram leader, the authorities who made that arrest have insights that I don't have that led them to take that action.
I'm curious. We're winding down on time. We might go a little bit over to answer some questions. Justine, why don't we just start with you? Why don't you give us like your final thought? What do you want to leave this audience with? We're most likely going to have to do a part two to cover a whole range of things, including what's happening in Russia and North Korea, because it seems like you and everyone else on this call have some great insights on that. But what's kind of your final thought for the group of, you know, financial professionals at traditional firms? We have crypto exchange compliance professionals, as well as regulators and law enforcement on this call. What's your kind of last final thought?
I think it's time for us to get a little bit more optimistic. I think that enough of the constantly negative narrative about crypto. We're maturing as an industry. You know, we've been through the hiccups just like every other technology has as well. We're figuring this out, you guys. We're bringing in leaders from Web 2 into Web 3. I'm seeing this in all the institutions I'm working with. The governance programs are maturing very, very quickly. And at a more technical level, you know, sort of what's old is new again. I don't know, like key management, for example. Sandip brought this up with custody. We know how to manage keys in a secure way, and we're starting there, and we're going beyond that to things like these multi-sig wallet technologies that companies like Fireblocks are supporting. Education, social engineering, you know, behind a lot of these scams. We've got, you know, the sort of the next iteration of that with AI introducing other, you know, new capabilities on the part of bad actors with deep fakes and whatnot. But we're doubling down on educating and awareness campaigns for victims of scams. There's a lot going on with regards to providing support to victims of scams. And then there's emerging cryptographic capabilities such as zero knowledge proofs, which I think are really interesting as a privacy enabler on chain. That's not a new concept, a zero knowledge proof, but it's a new application on chain that I think is going to do a lot for us in terms of managing the sensitivity of identity and other data, and helping to continue to push forward on blockchain innovation at the same time.
I think, you know, privacy versus compliance requirements. I think that's a whole other conversation that I'm excited to jump into. Sandip, why don't you leave us with your final word for the audience?
Oh,
you're on mute.
Wanted to put some positive light on blockchain and cryptocurrency in general. If you want to have instant visibility on your liquidity in a large financial institution today, is it possible? Not possible. But it is possible in blockchain and crypto world because everything is programmed, smart contract, data, metadata, and then you put an AI on top of it, opens a lot of opportunities. So if you look at, for example, risk analytics as an area with blockchain and crypto, it makes things way more easier for you to kind of look at, you know, what risks you're dealing with and how you can tackle it efficiently. So I think I'm very convinced, you know, the benefits of blockchain as such, and I think the adoption will continue to grow. Crypto ISAC is a great initiative. We need to make sure that we emphasize on this is a general issue. Minimum cyber hygiene everywhere is an issue. Cryptocurrency market is not an exception. So how do we enforce minimum cyber hygiene? How do we share information to alert each other, you know, as to what's going on? And particularly, I think one of the elements is also interoperability. I think that has also been an issue, particularly in the blockchain and crypto world. How do we solve that in terms of collaboration? And it is definitely linked a lot more. I think one of the reasons these sanctions things come up because time and time again, the fingers are pointed to DPRK, and that makes a lot of countries nervous. And that's why there is so much nervousness on the corporate side then. Okay, you know what? We really don't want to land in trouble. But can be broader than this actually. There was an article in FT, and you can go check it out, is the NVIDIA GPU on a data center as a service is available at a cheaper cost in China than in United States. And guess what? United States has banned export of NVIDIA chips to China. So where are those chips appearing from? Take a guess. So I think something there is. It's not just about, for example, certain I would say elements who are sanctioned countries, but could be broader elements as well, which probably we really need to. And that article was so exciting, eye-opening. Is like, how is this possible? And they're scaling it, they're offering it like it's a proper like NVIDIA GPU data center as a service, 20% less cost than United States. So I think emerging tech is a very exciting area, but I agree with Justine. I would rather put crypto in a positive light in terms of opportunities and kind of potential it brings, but we all have to collaborate for sure.
I love that. And, we're going to go a little bit longer, guys. Don't worry, there will be a recording sent to you. You don't have to email 100 times about the recording. We'll make a recording available. If you'd love to stay on, I'd love to answer some of these questions, as well as get into who's hiring at these organizations as well, because I think that's always fun for those looking for a job. Evan, why don't you leave us with your final thoughts?
Sure. I mean, I would just send a message to the folks that are involved in threat intelligence and in security when it comes to crypto or crypto native companies or any TradFi companies that are crossing in and out of the digital finance space. I think a lot of times people are saying, if only I knew, if I could hear the conversations of my adversaries or my customers, right? If only I could hear that, if only I could see what they were saying. And the reality is you just have to keep your eyes open to what's right in front of you, because the way that open source intel works these days, you can exactly see the conversations of your adversaries, of your customers, of whoever. You can see that because we know where they're going on and they're going out in an open space, right? The trick is being able to gather those conversations at scale and make sense of them at scale. Right. Yes.
Making it actionable, right? Which is what you guys are doing. It's like, how do
Exactly.
that information is great, but how do you use it? How do you assess risk with it?
Exactly. Nobody wants to just be buried in reports. Nobody wants to be buried in alerts. The question is what to do with it. What does it mean, right? And what's really cool is that the way that AI and sort of like data science has evolved in the last few years, that is possible now in an automated way that is timely, that is up to the second, right? And that opens up a lot of doors. And I think Sandip is right about this, that, it applies not necessarily just to, cyber intelligence as it applies to like adversaries. It can tell you a lot also about customers, about supporters, about all that kind of thing, right? It tells you a lot about the community at large. That being said, I will say, much to the point that was just raised, I also do not use Telegram. And when people suggest to me that they want to connect to my Telegram account, I'm always like, I don't think you really want to connect to my Telegram account. I don't think you really want that. But nonetheless, like I said, these are large influencer communities. You can learn a lot by listening to the people that are participating in them.
Awesome. Let's finish up with a quick rapid fire. I think we have about maybe 8-9 minutes. We're going to go over. Justine, are you hiring? What are you hiring? And there's a great question in the chat. Does someone need to be a cybersecurity expert to be in crypto security and compliance? Maybe you can say if you're hiring and then maybe give your insights there. Maybe there's some parallel, legal work or some parallel vocation that might transfer well into cybersecurity that you can give us.
I don't think there is any baseline qualification required to get into crypto compliance. So the answer is no. You don't have to be cybersecurity expert to get into like crypto compliance. You have to remind yourself that it's a distributed ledger. It's out there in the open. If you are a coder, if you have passion for data analytics, you can learn pretty fast actually.
That's right. And cybersecurity expert can mean so many different things these days. But yes, thank you for asking. We are hiring. We're looking for ninjas, blockchain professional, experienced analysts and developers who
Uh-oh. Did we lose Justine?
I think she froze for a second. Let's see if she can come back quickly.
That's
Oh, man.
just as she was up. There we go.
Oh, sorry, Justin. You cut out there for a second. So we
Yeah,
got up.
right at my recruitment pitch.
Yeah. So maybe just go through who you're looking for again.
Yes, I'm looking for experienced on-chain analysts, blockchain analysts, and other security experts who understand threat landscape as it applies to blockchain.
Awesome. I know there's some good crypto investigators in the chat, so hopefully they heard that and will reach out to you. And if you're looking to get into crypto, I love helping people. Feel free to reach out to me. Quick questions right now. Who wants to take this one? Do you think travel rule is going to help fight crime in crypto? Any takers here?
Well, look, I'll jump in. I'm pro regulatory pressure to enhance security standards. So yes, would be my short response.
And I think the information collecting is going to do, especially with scams, right? If you have to ask the customer who they're sending funds to and what's the information that goes along with it, and it's like a Nigeria exchange that nobody's ever heard about, and I'm just using that as an example, I think you're going to glean, especially for internal investigators and compliance professionals, you're going to get so much more information. And it adds another layer that when you're being questioned about where you're sending the funds to, that I think would help.
Force that capability to exist on the receiving end.
Yeah, exactly. Evan, what do you think is going to happen to those exchanges that don't follow the travel rule? All those, I think it's called Freedom Tower in Russia. What happens to those exchanges? Did they get sanctioned by OFAC, or did they just get sanctioned because they did not follow the travel rule, and a Coinbase isn't going to try to send funds to them if they're not following the travel rule?
That's the problem is if they are not following the rules, and then they can't work with the other exchanges, right. And then there's no way of cashing out the funds. Then you have the funds permanently locked inside of an exchange in Russia, which doesn't actually do cyber criminals any good, right? That's kind of the secret to this. It's like, who benefits, right? At the end of this, there's this like magical rainbow of fraud. There has to be a cash out point, right? If there's no way of getting the money out to a legitimate place where they can take the money out, this whole system doesn't work, right? And that's why it's so important to make sure that the financial institutions, as well, and by this I am also including Binance, Kraken, Coinbase, et cetera, that they are as aware as possible about what's going on, because that's actually how we lock out the illicit actors, right? If they're really locked into a Russian crypto exchange and the only way of getting their money out is in rubles in Russia, we've just ended the ecosystem. We've destroyed their ecosystem.
And I think that's helpful for OFAC too, seems like they're working overtime the last 2 years to try and sanction every entity. Great job on them for getting in touch with some of those Cambodian businesses that are definitely facilitating pig butchering or human trafficking. Last question, Evan, you mentioned the face-to-face OTC transactions in the Arabian regions. Someone was asking, could you elaborate? They asked what specific tools or methods you use. I'm assuming you're going to point towards the Cloudburst tool set. But what are your thoughts on, maybe you can elaborate what you're seeing there in that region?
I wish I could say this is some kind of elaborate methodology I'm using that I'm magically turning straw into gold. These people are going on Telegram on particular channels relating to money laundering in the Arabian Peninsula, crypto money laundering, and they are saying, I want to buy or sell this amount of USDT, and they will maybe say it's stolen, and they'll say this is the exchange rate, and they'll say face-to-face transaction in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi or whatever. Here is my phone number, and they will literally leave a phone number in Telegram, right? So what is the grand methodology for figuring this out? It's to collect it, right, and make it all searchable, right, which is basically what we've done, right? And that's the idea. It really, I hate to say it, it is not that complicated. It is simply gathering the data where these people are doing this stuff, making it available. We have, obviously, one of our products is Floodlight, which is an index of suspected crypto fraud, financial fraud actors, where it's very easy to be able to search for a wallet address, a phone number, an email address, and quickly see what is this person engaged in, like what kind of activity they're engaged in, right? But it is unfortunately that easy. And some of these people, the weirdest part is they'll go on and they'll say face-to-face transactions only, $25 million minimum, et cetera, et cetera. Who writes that in Telegram? It's just unbelievable. Like who has the guts to write something like that openly in Telegram? Look, Mexican drug cartels are recruiting sicarios on Telegram. It's a free-for-all. It's a very open environment. You'll see a little bit of everything. And among that, you will see are people that are trying to trade $25 million worth of stolen or laundered money. And like it's like the Craigslist of the internet, right? But
That
that is
was going to be my description right there. Sajad, you asked that question about what can compliance officers do to overcome the limitations, and I think Evan just answered it. After a transaction, there's still a wealth of information out there that can tie together those crypto transactions. Sandip, we're going to leave the ball in your court. You're in emerging markets. What are you excited about? And can you explain that without saying the word AI is the better question.
It is AI, and I'm very excited what AI agents hold for all of us in future. And I'm spending a lot of my time on AI agents. Actually, it's very fascinating. The way I would say, the way I describe it, the way the compute model and data, all these three technologies, the way they are evolving at so fast, it's just fascinating. So I would definitely say AI agents. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much, Justine, Sandeep, Evan. It was great to bring such diverse backgrounds and knowledge. I think we took traditional cybersecurity, risk intelligence on Telegram, and we brought it into one cohesive conversation. I want to take an extra time to special thanks to Lona, who spent the majority of her last week putting together this webinar, making sure we have the best people on these calls, doing all the administrative work to make sure it's nice, crisp, clear audio and video. And I want to thank everyone that took the time to attend and stay an extra 10 minutes later to get some of that extra sauce that we put in there. And you'll all get a recording. And I think you should probably take a pen and paper out the next time you hear this recording and really write down some of these thoughts, because these are industry leading thoughts if I've ever seen them. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.